Let me share this screen. We're gonna do it a little bit different than we normally do, and but we're gonna kind of do a rapid fire approach to this. And yeah, so when we last left off, we talked about the Wizards beating the Timberwolves and the Trailblazers going into the break. We had the All-Star break, and we came out of that playing the Knicks. We lost that game 115 to 109. We started off well. The Knicks came back. Oh, right. The abbreviated version of this, let me explain it real fast. I'm going to go through all the games and the scoring real quick. And then each one of you guys are going to pick two games you want to talk a little more in depth about. And then we can get out of here a little bit earlier. And if it's the same games, then so be it. And then we can just preview the upcoming games after that. I'm going to just speed fire through this. So anyway, we did well in the first, poorly in the second, and the third, and in the fourth quarter as well. So just it was like a slow trickle where kind of they whittled away at that lead, and we lost that game at home 109 to 115 to the New York Knicks. The next game was against the Bulls. We lost that game. It was a bit more of a blowout. It started off close again. Outscored them by 2 in the first. Then they outscored us by 4 in the second. Outscored us by 5 in the third. And then they really kind of turned it on in the fourth. They held the Wizards to only 15 points, and the Bulls scored 28. And so it made it a much more lopsided victory than maybe it should have been. Again, a 102 to 82 victory on the 26th of February. Then the next game is against the Hawks, one of the teams we are competing for, sort of at the bottom of the standings here. If you want to take a look at the live standings, the Wizards are at 10th, the Raptors are at 9th, the Hawks are at 8th. And so that's kind of where we're at. The top 10 teams make it, and then they kind of like a play-in thing. Anyway, so we were able to beat the Hawks in a very close game, tied after one. Hawks had a 4-point lead going into halftime. They actually extended that lead by 1, outscored us by 34 to 33 in the third. But then the Wizards come storming back and outscore them 34 to 26 and take a 3-point win. And this game was in Atlanta. So that was good. And then they kind of were able to roll that into a win over the Raptors. The Wizards outscored them by 4 in the first, by 5 in the second, by 2 in the third, and they come away with a 119 to 108 victory. They both scored 30 in the fourth quarter. But then it's kind of this weird thing that they're doing these series this year. So we play the next game also against the Raptors. This one's on Saturday. The other one was on Thursday. This game was close. The Wizards outscored them by 4 in the first. The Raptors outscored them by 4 in the second. So it was tied going into halftime. The Raptors take a lead of 7 points going into the fourth quarter. And then the Wizards actually hold the Raptors to only 19 in the fourth, and they outscored them by 7. It forces overtime, but unfortunately the Toronto Raptors outscored them 11 to 4 in overtime, and they take a 116 to 109 win in that game. Then the next game, a lot of people were like, oh, they should just sit some players. There's no way we're going to beat the Bucks. The Bucks are just too good. But in this game, the Bucks did take a pretty big lead, or 6-point lead in the first, and then extended that in the second, outscored them by 2. But the Wizards had a really good third quarter, outscored them 32 to 24. And the Wizards actually had a really good fourth quarter up until the end, where the game had gotten very close. But the Bucks kind of ran away with it at the very end of the game. But the Wizards made a really good run at this and made it a lot closer than I expected going into it. They only lost this game 111 to 117 in this matchup. So a lot of stats, a lot of things I just threw at you guys. Champ, I'm going to let you pick your first 2 games that you want to talk. The first of 2 games you want to talk about, and then I'm going to get Arun's take on that game as well. So what game do you want to break down?
I want to talk about the Hawks game, because the Hawks game was very important, because it was the debut of the new head coach for the Hawks, Quinn Snyder, returning to the bench as a head coach in the NBA, and the Wizards were able to go out there on their home floor and be able to do some damage to them. It was a close game. It was highly contested. Kyle Kuzma went out there, scored very well. They were able to really do some real good here on the road against this Hawks team. Daniel Gafford had a double-double. Beal had 37, Kuzma had 28. Abdia, he didn't score a lot, only 4 points, but he had 13 boards in this one, and they were able to do what they needed to do. They didn't have Porzingis because of an injury, knee soreness, so they didn't have all their big three, but they had two of their big three, and that was enough for them to be able to deal with this team. Of course, Trae Young, a former Wizard himself, was able to do some. No, he's not a former Wizard. What the fuck am I talking about? But Trae Young was able to do some damage with 31 points, but it just wasn't enough to be able to carry this team to where they needed to go. But this was a big statement win, especially because this is a team that they're trying to catch up to in the standings to get a better chance in the play-in. So they needed this win badly.
It was interesting how many players on the Heat got into double digits. To have 7 players in double figure, scoring, is really impressive. But they only held one to over 20. I think that was the key, is that they all got some, but not enough. I mean, and that's the difference in this game. Looking at some of the stats, Arun, what are some of your thoughts on this game?
Yeah, Beal was great down the stretch in this game. He's very clutch. After 2 games with sub 20 points, he actually, I think he had a season high for him, which was great. Trae Young couldn't guard him, and Kuzma also had 28 points, which is good. And overall, just a good win for the Wizards, considering that it's likely going to be the Hawks in the play-in game along with the Wizards, and it was an opportunity for them to catch up in their division as well.
Yeah, interesting matchup for sure. Okay, Arun, your first of your 2 games that you want to talk about.
I'm going to talk about that loss against the Raptors. Porzingis started the game off really well, but something happened to him in the second half. I don't know if it's fatigue. It's like the game that we went to early in the season against Miami. Porzingis starts off hot, and then he has like 6 points, I believe, or something for the rest of the game. And Beal, he tried to run the offense without Monte Morris, but the Wizards had, I believe, 23 or 24 turnovers in this one. And when they got to overtime, they only scored 4 points. And the other win against Miami, they only had 3 points. So something, I think Wes Unseld should probably try to expand the rotations maybe, because it seemed like fatigue was definitely a factor in the overtime. And defensively, the Wizards, they didn't even use Corey Kispert, probably because he's gassed maybe, or the Wizards offense is just terrible down the stretch of this game, no matter who is trying to create the shot. Give credit to Toronto's defense, but the Wizards weren't really running through their sets. They were walking up the ball to half court. And although there was a gimme bucket that could have been made by Porzingis, but the Raptors, they're battling the Wizards for playoff positioning. And if the Wizards had won this game, they would have secured the tiebreaker. But right now, the Wizards, if they want to be ahead of the Raptors as far as the tiebreaker, they have to win at Toronto, which is much harder to do. It's good that the Wizards got 1 win, but it would be really nice if they got 2 wins.
Yeah, for sure. What are some of your thoughts on that game as well? Sorry, I'll pull it back up again.
So what kind of, and I said this to you guys in our group chat, what kind of killed me was the fact that Corey Kispert was perfect from beyond the arc. Why are they not setting him up to try to make more shots from beyond the arc? I think they could have won this game if they'd let him shoot more. Honestly, I don't know what was going through their mind. He was perfect from beyond the arc, perfect, and yet they didn't take advantage of that. I honestly think they could have. If they'd have taken advantage of that, I think they could have won this game. He had 12 points, and all 12 of those points were from beyond the arc. So I think if you give him a chance to shoot more, he played 35 minutes and only had 12 points, but they were all from beyond the arc. And from what I was watching, all his shots from beyond the arc were like nothing but net. He wasn't missing. He had the hot hand. You have to ride the hot hand when you have it. Now, granted, you had your big three, and they did well. Porzingis had 22, Beal had 21, and Kuzma had 16. So they did fine. But if you let Kispert continue to shoot from beyond the arc with the hot hand, I think you win this game. Honestly, I think you win this game. And that's what my question was like, why is Kispert not shooting more from beyond the arc? Because he was hot. And honestly, like the Raptors were able to exploit that, and they were able to do what they needed to do offensively, and they were able to outscore them in the paint. They were able to do everything they needed to do well in order to win this game in overtime. And that final shot that Beal took before in regulation, I think was like, I know he was trying to make a play, but I think he should have thought more to see, try to find the open man and try to have a better look at a game-winning shot instead of trying to do it all himself. I think that right there, I think was a little bit of a mistake on his end. And I think that kind of was my other gripe there, was that he should have tried for a better shot or look for somebody else who had a better look to give themselves a chance to win the game outright and not go to overtime, because they go to overtime and they lose it. So that's my thoughts on this one.
Just from looking at the statistics, I didn't actually have to watch this game, but what it looks like is these 24 turnovers is key, right? Because that's 10 potentially missed possessions compared to Toronto. Points in the paint. So if you fix the turnovers and points in the paint on the defensive side, just smart ball control, making not even the draining threes, but just being smart with the ball.
Also the rebounding too. They're out rebounded by 9. It's pretty crazy that they were even in this game.
Yeah, but I just think that it's defense. Scoring 109 points is enough to win a game. It's allowing the 116, I think, that really did them in. From what it looks like. I didn't watch the game, but
It went to overtime, so I guess the Wizards allowed 11 points in the overtime, and I think the offense, in the overtime at the end, especially in the second quarter, the Wizards defense definitely let them down though. I think they kind of expected to walk over the Raptors because they did so the previous game, and maybe that's the back-to-back, but they kind of have to be more consistent than that, especially since they can't afford to lose games like this.
The third quarter killed them. The third quarter killed them, like it always seems to do with this team. The third quarter killed them.
Yeah. It's interesting. Yeah, they kind of live and die by that quarter. All right. That was Arun's game, right? So then we're now back to Champ's game, the second game. Yeah, okay. Champ, pick your second game.
Well, my second game was going to be the Raptors overtime game, so I'm going to switch and go with the one where we won against the Raptors with Kuzma absolutely going off with 30 points in that one. You actually had the big three back, and the big three really, really scored well. They actually combined for 70 points. 70 points. 70 of the Wizards' 119 points came from your big three of Kuz, KP, and Beal. DeLon Wright was fair with 7 points, but Daniel Gafford had 18, and Kispert had 10 off the bench. So they actually had some pretty balanced scoring from here. They shot well from the field. Over half of their shots they made, and they shot very well from three-point land, almost 47%. So that's one of the things that's going to really do well for them, is like being able to shoot well, not only from the field, but from beyond the arc, which we know this is not really a good three-point shooting team, but the fact that they were able to make almost 47% of their shots from beyond the arc shows how well they were able to do with this game. And they needed this win, just like they needed that win against the Hawks prior to this game. They needed this win against the Raptors because of the fact of the play in, and as mentioned before, the whole tiebreakers and things like that. They needed this win in the worst way possible. So this was a really well-rounded game from the Wizards. Of course, the Raptors didn't shoot well from beyond the arc, and that killed them. Even though they were perfect from the charity stripe, the fact that they could barely make a shot from beyond the arc was what was able to keep the Wizards from losing this game.
Yeah. The other thing that stands out to me is the difference in the turnovers. They only had 14 turnovers, so that was even between the two versus, a -10 in the other game. I think that could be a 10-point swing, which is the difference. We're talking about between these two games. That definitely stands out to me. Arun, what are some of your thoughts on this one?
The Wizards made the top 10 NBA highlights 4 times, mostly due to Daniel Gafford having a couple excellent dunks, including a really good alley-oop from Denny to Daniel Gafford. I think that was also the key difference. He had 18 points in this one. In the other game, he only had 9 points, and he was clearly active on both ends. Kuzma was also much better in this game, even though Beal has played slightly better in the second Raptors game. The turnovers were more of an issue in the second game. And so overall, it was good for Washington to get a win, but I think they became a little bit complacent because of how easily they got this one.
Yeah, the Kings right now are on a power play. So the Caps are on the penalty kill. 1 minute left approximately in the power play. Just under 7 minutes left in this first period here. And the Kings are already up to 10 shots on goal, and the Capitals are still stuck at 1 shot on goal in this game. So, we're over 10 minutes in. So, we got to start playing some better defense here, and just getting it out of our zone. They have just had a crazy amount of zone time on this possession, and they're just kind of asking for it. 30 seconds left in the power play here. I'm just going to stick here for the rest of this power play. They shoot it on net. It's another deflection, and we finally are able to clear it with 19 seconds left in this power play, and both teams get a line shift as we get down to about 6 minutes left in this first period. But all right, Arun, what is the last game you want to talk about?
I just want to talk about this Bucks game. Overall, Beal was pretty good from 2-point range, but from 3-pointer, he was 0 for 5. Porzingis was even less efficient than Beal. He didn't even have that good first quarter to fall back on against Milwaukee, and it was kind of just ugly for a lot of the bench players. Jordan Goodwin was 1 of 7 from the field. They actually had to start Anthony Gill in the starting lineup, but he only had 2 points, which was pretty terrible in today's NBA. Denny had a really good game off the bench. He made a couple threes, shot really efficiently, but Milwaukee was on fire from 3-point range. The Wizards out rebounded the Bucks, I believe, by 9 rebounds, and they had less turnovers than Milwaukee, but Milwaukee won this game because they're able to get to the free throw line a lot more than the Wizards. Giannis by himself had more free throws than the Wizards. That might be a little bit of the superstar calls, and also in the closing couple minutes of this game, Giannis stepped out of bounds. The NBA officials ruled that he was actually out of bounds, and this game got kind of down to the wire. But the Wizards, they found themselves down, I believe, by double figures in the second quarter, largely due to the poor bench play. Beal only had 2 turnovers. One of them, though, came in a critical point in the fourth quarter. But Beal has to play better. I think being 0 for 5 from 3-point range probably hurt. He was supposed to be like a Ray Allen kind of player. He's shooting 37% from 3 this season, but he needs to do better than that. And I guess without Kuzma, this was kind of an expected loss. The Bucks winning streak was broken the previous day against the Philadelphia 76ers. So it wasn't that surprising that the Bucks were motivated to come out and win. The Wizards did manage to slow down Giannis a little bit because in the previous game he had 50 points, but he did almost have a triple double. He did have 13 assists, and ultimately the Wizards, because they couldn't knock down a couple more shots, and it was also a back-to-back game without Kyle Kuzma. They lost this one.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out here whether Giannis got the triple double or not, because now I
He didn't.
conflicted.
He didn't. He
He
didn't.
did not get the triple double. He did change the box score like just a couple hours ago. He did have a triple-double, but they took away that garbage rebound that he had, like, as a joke. He shot the ball at the rim when they were killing the clock at the rim, and he rebounded the ball, so they discounted that rebound.
Why did they discount it?
Because it was basically like the Wizards were not playing defense on that play, and it was kind of a joke. But he was basically trying to pull an Andre Black, like if you've ever seen that, like, or Ricky Davis.
I guess I'm just kind of surprised because like it is a rebound. I don't understand how do you take it away. It's weird.
Because they basically said it was like, I don't know how, like, I guess they have sanctity for the game. It's interesting that they decide to do this, but they don't, like, I don't know, there's calls that are so egregious that they don't overturn those. It's just kind of a weird thing.
Yeah.
Like an honor rule about.
Because it's funny because the AP reports it as triple-double. Everyone does, but now in the box score, I can see that it's been fixed.
That they decide to change it.
But it's funny because like the Yahoo scoreboard never got updated because they don't go back and fix it. But like I see here that Google and ESPN has. So anyway, I just thought it was kind of interesting. I was kind of okay with him getting a triple-double for it. Like I was kind of like whatever. Like, but it's interesting that they retroactively were like thought that it was different. But anyway, Champ? What are your thoughts on this one?
Admittedly, I did not watch this game because I was literally in the middle of live stream reacting to AEW Revolution. So I didn't get a chance to watch this game. But the fact that the Wizards only lost by 6 points to the best team in the East shows that this team is capable of hanging with the best teams in the NBA. Now, yes, Giannis did get what was a triple-double. Now it's no longer a triple-double, but the fact that Porzingis and Beal were able to go out there and do what they needed to do. They didn't have Kuzma in this game, but they were still able to hang tough with one of the perennial favorites of the conference and only lose to them by 6. But it's still a tough loss to lose to a team like this, especially when you're in the running to try to stay in the running for at least a playing game, though you're still trying to play your way out of the playing game and just get into the playoffs outright. You don't want to get into a playing game and then end up losing the playing game and just not be in the playoffs. So you want to get into that number 6 spot in order to avoid the playing game. So that's the goal. You want to get outside of that 7 spot and get out of that playing game and want to be able to get into the playoffs outright, sit pretty, and be ready to play an actual playoff series. And this didn't really help matters much, so they're going to really have to buckle down and start pushing it.
Yeah, interesting. Swallowers in chat said, fair point, but the Raps covered him hard. He only had 4 good looks the whole game for Corey Kispert, that was. So that's interesting. So I guess he was covered better, and that's why they didn't get him the ball more. So I thought that's an interesting take from a Raptors fan's perspective, which I appreciate in chat. Let's take a look at this upcoming schedule. We've got a very, very busy week. We have the Pistons game that was supposed to happen a couple of weeks ago, sort of breaking up this long homestand that was supposed to happen between a bunch of these games. So again, tomorrow 7 we go to play the Pistons, and then on Wednesday, so quick turnaround at 7 back home against the Hawks. It's kind of a rematch of that game we were talking about a little bit earlier. And then on Friday, just 2 days later, they played the Hawks again. It's another one of these mini series. And so that's at 7 o'clock. And then on Sunday, they played the 76ers at 6 p.m. And so I just want to pull up the standings again. So we're talking about here, we're playing the 3rd place team. We're playing the 8th place team, and we really got to take advantage of playing the Pistons game. I'll let each one of you guys just give your general thoughts on the upcoming week, and you don't have to necessarily break down each game or whatever you want to talk about. But I'll start off with you, Champ. What are your thoughts about these 4 games that are upcoming?
The 2 Hawks games are the most important. They're the most important. They're ahead of us in the standings. You have to beat them if you're going to get above them in the standings in the playing game. You have to beat them. Yes, the Pistons game is a trap game because of the fact that they're last in the Eastern Conference, and of course, Philly's third in the Eastern Conference. So those 2 games are very important as well. But You have to beat the Hawks. You have to. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Those two games against the Hawks on Wednesday and Friday are the most important in this 4-game stretch. You lose even one of those games, you put yourself in a big hole to try to get in better positioning when it comes to the play-in. But the goal ultimately is, like I said just previously, get out of being in the play-in. Get yourself into a position where you're in, where you don't have to play your way in and have to worry about playing a game where you can lose and you're out, single elimination. You want to get yourself in a position where you're in, and it starts with beating the Hawks. You beat the Hawks, you put yourself in a good position to push yourself forward and get yourself in a position to get out of the play-in. So the Hawks games are the most important games in this 4-game stretch.
Yeah, I just want to remind people. So 7 through 10 make it. And then there's some games there. The winner of the 7-8 gets the 7 seed. The loser of the 7-8 plays the winner of the 9-10 game for the 8 seed. So it's an interesting setup. So you really want to be in that 7-8 game because then you're just one win and you're in situation. And even if you lose, you're not done. But if you're playing the 9-10 game, you lose that one game, you're out, right? So to speak to Champ's point, is you really are trying to get to that 7 or 8 spot to give yourself a chance here in these games. Arun, what are some of your thoughts on the week ahead?
I guess you want to be rooting for wins if you're hoping for a potential playoff run, but also in the back of my mind, it's also if they lose those games, they do get a better draft pick because right now, even though they've only like in the 10th spot and the Raptors are in 9, the Raptors, if the season ended today, would have the 14th pick, and the Wizards, if the season ended today, would have the 8th pick. So there's not a lot of separation between if they're want to get like a potential top 4 draft pick since they reformed the lottery odds. The Wizards are actually would have a 20% chance at a top 4 draft pick, which is much higher than it has been in previous years. So it'd be nice if they could win these games, but I think the worst outcome is if they like just manage to like tread 500, get to the play-in game, and like end up missing the playoffs anyways. Especially with this French kid Wembanyama as the 7-4 player of the year. It's going to be probably the next Kevin Durant. To get a shot at him would be great, but it's also nice for the Wizards to get wins. But if they can't win, then what's the point of just being mediocre and losing in the play-in game? So it's going to be interesting to watch in the next upcoming week.
Just want to give a little bit of an update on this Caps game. Getting very chippy, a lot of cursing, a lot of stick checking and chippiness after the period was over. They killed the first power play. The Caps were playing better, but it's just a shooting gallery for the Kings. The Kings have put up 19 shots to the Capitals 3 shots through the first period. And unfortunately, Kuzi took a very late penalty. So they will have the balance of a majority of a power play to start the second period here. But it's been a shooting gallery, but Darcy Kemper has been playing phenomenal in net for the Caps. So I hope that they can support him a little better with some goal scoring in the second period because he deserves it for, it should be 2 or 3-0 right now without his stellar play. I know some Caps fans give him a lot of crap. So, but yeah, for me, if you want to succeed in this season and make the play-in game and make a big run on it, you got to win the 3 games that are not the 76ers game. And then to Champ's point, if you're really trying, to both of your points, they have to make a decision of who they are. You don't want to be the 500 team. You don't want to miss it by just a game or make the play-in and just lose in that 9-10 matchup. So it'll just be interesting to see. This is, I think, kind of a pivotal week for both the Capitals on whether or not they're going to make a run for it and for the Wizards. So it'll be interesting to see when we come back next week where things stand. I'm going to stop the screen share there. And Champ, I'm going to let you I know your screen is glitching a little bit, but give your final thoughts and give a little No Spots podcast update as well to our fans before we let you go.
All right. So yeah, I'm looking forward to these next 4 games for the Wizards. Again, those 2 Hawks games are very pivotal in their pursuit to be in a better position for the playing game. And so hopefully they're able to pull it out. I'm looking forward to the Defenders being able to beat Vegas again. And for the No Spots podcast, we have a busy week in terms of podcasting. We have the 2nd episode of the New Japan Cup recap coming up, where we're going to look at the first 3 nights of the New Japan Cup, which is the first round matches of the tournament. We will recap those and then look ahead to the next couple nights of action upcoming. And then we're returning on our Saturday night on Twitch, where myself and Siv will recap AEW Revolution, which was a phenomenal pay-per-view. We had fun reacting to it. So we'll give you our thoughts on the matches and our final grades for the pay-per-view as well. So you can check out the live streams of those podcasts on our Twitch channel, which is twitch.tv/True No Spots Pod. Or you can listen to the audio versions of the podcast via the podcast partners button on SportsOTHP.com. We are on Spotify or wherever you get your podcast from. Nokigenyo, sayonara.
Thank you so much, Champ. And I hope that people do check out the True No Spots podcast and all the great stuff that Champ does. On our website, you can click on the podcast partners button. You can get them there. Also, if you check out our Team Sports OTHP, you get all the links for Champ as well. So Champ, thank you so much, and we'll have you back on next week for our March Madness special.
All right, see y'all.
All right, I'm gonna talk to Arun for just a second here. I don't know if I have a graphic for this. I'm just gonna put up the 300 one for now. Arun, what are your thoughts? I know March Madness starts next week. We're going to do a special about that, but any thoughts going into, I know that there's this is kind of the final week before all that, and there's some at play for some of the spots, but as a preview to our special that we'll do next week, where we'll talk about a little bit more in depth, any thoughts you have on March Madness and how college basketball has been going on this year?
Yeah, I've been kind of following it more, especially Villanova basketball. They haven't been really good for most of the year, but now they got Justin Moore back into the lineup who missed the end of the tournament last year, and that's a big reason why they lost in the Final Four. They're probably on the outside bubble looking in, but even though Villanova might not make it, I did get to see a lot of teams like UConn, who looks pretty impressive, Xavier in the Big East. And also saw some Maryland basketball that beat Northwestern. They have lost a couple games on the road, but it's good for Maryland that they were undefeated at home and they'll probably make the tournament. And that story out of Alabama college basketball is pretty crazy. The number 3 potential overall pick is a murder suspect. So that was pretty crazy. And he ended up having a career high the next game, but at least right now he's like a witness. But that's all it's looking like. But still, it wasn't a good look. That I think if this happened in the NBA, they probably would have sat him out at least for a game for public perception. But Alabama is pretty concerned about their winning both in college football. They're now a powerhouse. It's crazy that no team really has been number 1 overall that long. Purdue lost to Northwestern when they were number 1, then Maryland beat them the next game. It's gonna Houston's right now the number 1 overall seed, but they're not even from a major conference, so it's gonna be looking forward to doing a little bit more prep and going over March Madness in the coming weeks.
It'll be fun, and anybody who's in chat or elsewhere, I'm gonna try to get a March Madness roundtable. I know, Arun, that you're into it. I know that we had that Eat Flat guy on a couple of weeks ago, and he's big into March Madness. I know Davey's super into March Madness, but I'm gonna have him come on our so the upcoming 2 podcast episodes. We'll talk about the road ahead for Sports on the Hill podcast. The next episode is going to be this March Madness. We're going to preview it all and talk about it next week with Ryan and potentially some other people as well. And so that'll be really fun. I don't know if I can get EJ back on. I know that he in the past has talked to us about that. But next week's show, we'll start off with Caps talk for the first 45 minutes or so. We'll do some quick XFL, maybe not as long of a one for that. And then we're going to get into some March Madness talk. And at the very end of the show, we'll briefly cover the Wizards, but it might be a little bit of a shorter Wizard segment next week because I do want it to be kind of a March Madness special. And then the following week will be our seventh. It's our streamiversary. It's our seventh streamiversary. So we've been doing this podcast for 7 years, and in fact, Arun in season 1 talked college basketball with me, so that's why it was a good segue tonight. And so we will talk about college basketball in on that streamiversary, as well as hockey and XFL and the Wizards. So it'll be a really big full show the next 2 weeks. So with that being said, we're not going to keep everyone too long tonight. But Arun, any final thoughts that you want to share with the podcast before we let you go tonight?
Not really. I saw an article that said RG3 should be a potential quarterback, but I think he should stay in his job at ESPN. He'll probably gets paid more money. The Wizards did make an addition. I forgot about that. They did add somebody from Australia. His name is, let me just see. Let me look up for a second. They got somebody from Australia and they added him. It's pretty funny that Xavier Cooks that they're making this addition. So he was the player of the year in Australia. Josh Giddey from the Thunder, who's like a breakout second-year player, he said this guy should be in the league. He isn't a great three-point shooter, but he's supposedly the honest of his league. So let's see. It'll be interesting to see how he plays. He's probably an upgrade over Anthony Gill, that's for sure. That's all I have to say, and thanks for having me on, Robbie.
Yeah, thank you so much. With that, we're going to end our Facebook Live broadcast as part of this. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in on the Facebook side of things, and thank you, everyone, for listening to the audio podcast of this that goes up on every Tuesday as well. And I really appreciate everyone for tuning in for episode 301 for that. It's been a really fun show. I'm going to put the Caps graphic again. And hopefully everyone will tune in for the next 2 episodes, and we'll have a little bit of a break, and then we will start season 8 in April, which is pretty hard to believe. But I really appreciate everyone for tuning in on Twitch and on Facebook. I'm going to end the Facebook live stream for that right now. I hope that you have a great week. DC Sports Without the Politics, Sports on the Hill podcast. Go Wizards, Capitals, and Defenders. I'm going to stop the live recording of that as well.
Recording stopped.
And we're still live here on Twitch. If anyone has a suggestion for someone that they want to go raid, I am open to that now. I was curious if Ryan, Natty Flat Guy, was still on, because if he was, I was thinking about rating him. But it looks like he is off now. I think we're just gonna maybe go to our normal guy. If anybody knows who that is, it's KR Acoustic. But if I'm down, if anyone has any final thoughts about anybody else they'd like to see, let me know right now. If not, I'll start that raid over right now. But thank you, everyone, for tuning in on Twitch. Hopefully you can join in on the raid. And raid and sub raid. All right. Well, thank you, everyone, for tuning in. And we're going to raid over now.